Welcome to AI Augmented. Today I'm here with Sean David Raffini, also known as JD, and he's dedicated his career to AI, which included leadership roles at eBay and Meta, but nowadays he's a founder at WiseQs, which brings the power of enterprise AI to all e-commerce stores. So thanks for joining us today, JD.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Well, this is a very exciting time, I'm sure, for someone who's spent their entire life, working on AI. So how does it feel? What does it feel like?
It's amazing. As you said, yes, I've been more than 20 years in the field. Actually, I did my PhD in what was called machine learning at that time. I've seen the entire evolution from the very early days to something that we didn't expect would happen so quickly. A few years ago, I remember it was not even imaginable that we would pass the Turing test, and today we have models that can converse with people in a natural language. It's quite amazing. The progress has been outstanding, unexpected and outstanding. So it's magical time. Almost, I feel like maybe the way people felt when electricity was invented, right? It's this transformation, societal transformation. So it's absolutely amazing.
I think the phrase I kind of sometimes use is it feels like our reality has changed, or at least shifted. And you mentioned the Turing test there, right? I guess that's an interesting question, because for someone who, I know you spent a lot of time on NLP and it was very kind of close to your heart. Did you expect it to be like a bigger deal when we passed the Turing test?
In a bigger deal, like passing the Turing test, a big deal? Not really, because there was a lot of critiques about the Turing test, People said, well, it's not really a measure of human intelligence. It has some limitations. It doesn't really capture, what makes a human. But still, we didn't have a machine that could pass that test. So it remained some sort of interesting target. And we were very happy to see that we could eventually pass it. But we went very, very far and beyond what we expected, right? Compared to what we were doing in NLP a few years ago, like, for instance, humor, right? Jokes. There was research in the NLP conference about how to try to capture, characterize, identify. But now we have models that can crack jokes. And even better, they can explain the jokes and tell you why they are funny. It's just outstanding.
Amazing, yeah. So you mentioned a few things there. So do you want to kind of take us briefly through your career? You mentioned you did a PhD in machine learning, right?
Yes, that's right. I did a PhD in machine learning, undisclosed numbers of years ago.
That's all good. Confidential.
And after that, I worked at eBay for about 15 years. I was a director of applied research there and focusing on many aspects of what makes e-commerce, from understanding users' intent, search relevance, fraud detection, and many other topics. And after that, I joined Meta AI for 2 years, where I was working on bad content detection and removal. So we would use AI to identify inappropriate videos, and content in general, not just video, but text as well, like harassment, bullying, violence, anything that we didn't want to show our users. And after 2 years of that, I decided it was time for me to start my own company. This is something that was in the back of my mind for a long time. This and the conjunction of a dream I always had at eBay, which was providing to customers, to online shopping customers, an experience which is similar to what you get in a physical store with salesperson. So for a long time, and even today on many, many websites, the e-commerce approach is like inherited from search 20 years ago. Like, it's keyword based. You type keywords and the system, the search engine, understand or not what you want and show you a list. Like, it's like a salesperson bringing you 20 pens, right? And go figure it out. So you get it. Then you have to click and read and analyze and compare and decide what's good for you. And I always wanted to change that. I wanted an experience which is much more similar, where the salesperson or the online platform explain you what are the different options, which one are good for you and why. Look, something much more personal, much more personalized. And I realized that with the advances in large language model and NLP, this was within reach. And that's why I decided, that desire to start my own business and this opportunity I saw with large language model convinced me that it was time to try to, transform e-commerce for good. And that's what we're doing now at WiseQs.
Exciting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to discussing that. I think what's quite interesting is a lot of people only really became conscious of AI after the ChatGPT moment. So what's the first point where you were kind of applying AI actually at eBay, for instance? Can you remember what kind of year it was?
The year, well, we've always been, I was focused on machine learning. And so yes, when did that become AI? I think this was around 2005, if I remember correctly, maybe when deep learning became a thing, mainly through the impulsion of Andrew Ng, right? And when we started to realize that like these models could capture semantic, and it was, there was something there. So like we really realized that something has shifted. It was not the machine learning we have seen it for a decade. Something was happening. That was I think that's really when things starting to move with the deep learning model and distributed representation. So for the non-technical people, it's, you can represent the meaning of a word by a vector of numbers. And that was very instrumental in the progress of AI. And I think that's when, around 2010, I can't remember exactly, but that's when things started to shift, I would say.
So yeah, for the benefit of everyone, that's a long time before ChatGPT came along, right? And so in those kind of early days of applied AI, what kind of things were you able to do at that point? I think the benefit we have here is that probably everyone watching or listening is familiar with eBay and the eBay experience. So it speaks very kind of closely to the personal experiences we've had with AI throughout the years.
Yeah. So first, before answering that question, I'll go back to one point you said. Yeah, it seems a long time before ChatGPT. Yes, but it's also important to understand that the progress has been gradual. It's not that one day, we woke up and there was something like ChatGPT, which was transformer model over a large network. There was a lot of people that work and, innovated years after years. And you can trace every component of what is ChatGPT now and large language model to previous research that was done before. So to answer your question. So one of the main applications I would say that I've been working on, there was other at eBay, but was language understanding and in particular intent understanding. So eBay is interesting because it's a very large inventory, right? You can find on eBay pretty much anything that can be traded in the world is on eBay. So it's a very large inventory. So you have a lot of data. But at the same time, you have so niche categories and areas that in these categories, you have little data. And so there is this difficulty for language understanding and other application of AI where you have too many data and not enough data at the same time. And the first few applications where AI was very successful was intent understanding what the user is looking for and understanding if he's asking about a brand or if he's asking about a color or if he's asking about something else. That may seem easy, but like you could think, yeah, a color like blue, red. Yes, but no. Like if you go to Maker, for instance, you have color like, night shadows, and things like that. So proprietary color name can be interesting. So having an AI that is able to understand, the meaning of what the user is typing that's one of the great application of AI that I've seen. And of course, there was also application in image recognition. Since you want to sell something, you take your phone and you point at it, and the model understand. Oh, that's actually a mug, and you want to list it on eBay, and here's a description and this kind of thing. So another application of AI that we have seen in the early days of.
Wow, that's quite fascinating because I think probably like most eBay users, I just assumed if I search for red phone case or something like that it's just a pure kind of keyword search. So are you saying that even back then it was actually more advanced than just kind of pure keyword?
Yeah, it was. I mean, a case can be a legal case, can be a case for battles, can be so. any word has a very different meaning depending on the context. So understanding the context is critical. And it's been years of research in information retrieval to nail that problem. But with AI, we have made great strides in that direction. And nowadays, with large language model, we've seen magnitude improvement on that. Like large language model now, they can understand the meaning of what you say. They can understand the emotions. They can understand, as I was referring before, the tonality. Right? Is that a joke? Is that serious? So yeah, AI is critical for art of shopping online.
And obviously this is before the days when, everyone was talking about AI. So was it more of a challenge to kind of push this within the organization? Like from either getting features into production type perspective, or was there debate around costs on things? Was it expensive to kind of implement these kind of features at this point in time? Or
yeah, for me, it's been a journey. It's been a learning curve. And yes, when it's called machine learning, it was sometimes difficult to really make a crisp case for machine learning because customers, meaning product managers and engineers, would not necessarily understand the potential and the benefit of machine learning. And to be fair, it was not always, that good. Training a machine learning model is difficult, and sometimes you would reach, 70% accuracy, 80% accuracy, and it was difficult to make a case that we should use that in production. But with years, I've developed, a methodology to do that properly, and that involve many aspects. I can mention a few. For instance, very early on, from the get-go, when you start your machine learning project or AI project, understand what is the business metric, what is your customer's metric, like your product manager or your leader metric, right? And relate to machine learning metric, whatever you're optimizing in machine learning, can be accuracy, can be precision and recall, whatever. Relate that to that business metric and understand, how they correlate. Like if you increase your machine learning metric by that many points, what does this mean for your business metric? And that's very, because then you can have a very interesting conversation with your customer, with your product manager, and say, okay, I can reach that level in terms of machine learning, which means for your product, that means that kind of performance. And if I invest 2 more months and a little bit more research on that, then you'll see that kind of benefit. So that's very important. And the other aspect is also engage with the engineering very, very early, because machine learning AI can be complicated to train, can be complicated to serve, and there are constraints, memory, training time, inference time. So understanding the get-go, what are the constraints from your customers, what you can actually commit to in terms of your machine learning model is very important. So if you have this process where you engage your customers very early, you make very clear the constraint and the potential, then it's a much easier conversation. That said, that was before, right? That's when it was called machine learning. So things have shifted completely, right? I've seen that at even the last few years I was at eBay. It became like database, right? Nobody asks you to make a case for database, right? Everyone understands why you need a database, right? It's for AI now. Everybody understands that AI is critical, and so it's easier, I'd say now, for innovating with AI in the enterprise.
But has it gone the other way now? Do you just slap AI on any other bad idea and someone will back it?
Absolutely. I was, so there's a few companies I'm consulting with. It's actually the effort is around helping people understand what is feasible and what is still a little bit science fiction. So you set the expectation right the other way now. There's so much appetite for innovation and AI, and so much hype, about what AI can do, that you have to be careful about your customer expectation and make sure people understand what is feasible and what is.
Yeah, I guess it's great that there's lots of enthusiasm around AI, but again, probably like you, I see a lot of people maybe get it upside down a little bit, and ultimately it has to be driven by improving customer experience if it's customer facing. And obviously that's something you've been very highly focused on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That has not changed. You need to understand what is the business metric, and it has to be, your North Star. Whatever you do, it has to be your North Star. I think it's a little bit easier now because nowadays people tend to have greater expectation than what is actually feasible compared to maybe 10 years ago when people had very low expectation about what was feasible. So that's where I think the shift has happened and discussion has changed. But yes, you're absolutely right. Business metric is critical, and then it has to be always in your line of sight when you do.
Yeah, so kind of final question really about the whole kind of enterprise aspect of your career. So when you were kind of heading up research at eBay, then how much of it was kind of open-ended, given the ability to go and look at promising new technologies, and how much of it was kind of driven by specific business use cases?
Yeah, I'd say my approach for that has always been around 70% very product focused and business driven, and 70% that's a balance that I felt I've always worked well. You need open-ended research because that's how you get innovation. That's how you get surprises. That's how you get kind of paradigm shift. Sometimes you try a new approach, something totally different that very risky, but with a high potential return. And also for many companies, it's also important to be visible on the academic scene and publish papers for branding purpose, but also for attracting the best talents, right? So having open-ended research and contributing to the academic research is also important for that reason. So I've always tried to maintain a balance between the two.
But I think even down to like the independent entrepreneur working on their own, looking to implement AI, I think that's a balance which works, because it's the same. You want to use AI in a way which is going to have clear deliverables in your business, but at the same time, you need to experiment with new technologies and new features to see what they do and understand them to see where that potential is in future. So I think I might be pinching that 70-30 balance off you. Thank you. Excellent stuff. So obviously you'd had this amazing career in enterprise. So what made you switch to entrepreneurship and starting to do your own thing?
Yeah, it's been always in me. So it's not the first time I try something. I've tried a few startups before on the side, and I mean, like many startups, they didn't work out. And part of the reason was maybe because I was not 100% focused on them, right? Something I was doing on the side. But that's something that was always been in me. I always wanted to build something. And as the CEO of Perplexity AI said, it's the ultimate test in business, right? Creating your own company and making it run and get customers and traction is the ultimate test. It's also there's also another dimension I was interested in is when you start a small company, you have to do many different things, and that takes you outside of your comfort zone a lot. So you have to explore marketing and sales. And for me, I was more focused on AI before. I had to do a lot of development I was not familiar with. So you touch on many areas, and that allows you to grow many skills that you didn't have before. So that's also one reason why I wanted to make the switch. And finally, on a more humorous note, it's also I'd worked for other people all my life, and I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to be in control. I wanted to take a chance at having more weight on my destiny, so to speak. So that was all this motivation drove me to make the jump and start something. It's been a very fun ride. It's been a year, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. Everything I've been doing, the new areas I've explored, so much learning, so much surprises along the way. It's been fascinating so far.
And I do believe there's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur, and we're definitely going on a hockey stick for that as well. And yeah, I do hope one of the outcomes of the AI revolution really is that a lot more people get to do that and experience that and be their own boss, like you say,
Yeah,
build something of value.
absolutely. And I think like with this large language model now, you can do so much more on your own. And also the learning curve in many, many domains have accelerated, right? Ask GPT to give you a business plan. Ask GPT craft an ad campaign for you. And you get very good starting points. I mean, it's not perfect. You still need to, optimize and improve. It makes the learning curve so much shorter that I think you're right. Like a lot of people are going to, make the jump and be able to start, something much quicker and in a much easier way than they did.
Yeah, well, we discussed, didn't we? I signed up recently to the ChatGPT Pro plan, and actually the first thing I ever used research for was to prepare for our interview, right? And I was just blown away. I really was honestly blown away by the quality of what it produced. Was it strange reading like a 20-page like academic report on your career thoughts and views?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's mind blowing. Yeah, a few thoughts. It's very accurate. I looked into what you sent me, and it's actually quite impressive, the level of details. But the most surprising was the perspective the model was able to tease in hindsight, right? Looking at when that happened and how that fit into the bigger AI machine learning context. And reading that thing, I was telling myself, yeah, that makes sense. Actually, that's right. That happened at that moment, and the context was such that yes, it belongs to a wider, and that was happening in the machine learning AI community. So it was revealing, and in a way, it reminds me of a tweet I've seen recently where the person was saying, "Hey, an interesting exercise: ask GPT to tell you something you don't know about yourself." And I recommend everybody to do that. It's very fun, and it's along the same line. It's really it's beyond the report. It's beyond laying out factual information. It's really there's a level of analysis and inference and conclusion that is beyond like what we've seen before. So it's quite amazing.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I consider myself like a hyper learner. I think it's one of my strongest abilities is the ability to go really deep on something quickly. And I'm probably not the best writer, but I think I'm a pretty competent writer. But I have yet to find something from deep research which I don't feel is better than I could have done, even if I'd had like a week or so to produce that. So for me, it's a real, it's a real ground shift moment because, as we say, as an entrepreneur, having that kind of ability and that access, that level of intelligence is just groundbreaking. So, like,
Yeah, it's perfect knowledge, right? These models can grab all the information and then reasoning. So when you have this combination of these two features, then obviously you can really do wonders. So yeah, it's quite amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently considering applying to a couple of accelerators. So I was thinking, because with the business operating system which I'm building, there isn't really a lot of competitors because it's all based on completely new precepts like stop renting, start building, right? With the speed at which AI is getting better at coding, eventually people are just going to have their own custom software, right? So I've always known that there isn't direct competitors, but there's different types of competitors, like using an ERP system, right, which is designed for enterprise, but you could use it for small business, or using Zoho One or any of these kind of things. So I put together, albeit very detailed, like I find you need 1,000+ words to really get the best out of a reasoning model. But I put together this prompt asking it to go and do market research. And honestly, it's one of the most incredible things I've seen. A 59-page, I kid you not, 59-page report breaking down. First of all, it's like, okay, here are the all-inclusive systems, which could be your competition. So starting with ERPs, then kind of modular CRMs and things like Salesforce, where you could, add code in and all those kind of things. And then it's like, okay, and here are some of the component competitors for your data, your workflows, your interfaces, and winding that all together with the knowledge which I've given it about what I'm building to say, how they compare and where our advantages might be. And then just the level of integration, exactly what you said, between the specifics of what I'm doing and the general market and research we could build in, just made it amazing. And I felt like this has to make entrepreneurship more accessible to people, right? I might have been able to do an okay job of going and doing that myself, but anyone now can go and do an amazing job and have an idea like, okay, is there a market for this? Are there 100 other people doing it? And actually very quickly, you can get a really good understanding of whether your idea has potential and whether it's worth pursuing.
Does this mean that life is going to be, or business is going to be much more competitive because everybody's going to start their own company because it's so easy now?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to understand how this is going to impact, the business world and how many companies we're going to see. Is the number of companies created going to explode in the next few years? There are interesting questions around that.
Yeah, it's exciting times. It's exciting times. I almost took a couple of years out from the world while I was trying to work this stuff out and what it meant for me, because it was so overwhelming at times, understanding that the shift which was going to be happening. But I mean, ultimately, what it came down to for me was, if we stop focusing on products and services, because we don't really know what products and services people are going to need in a few years' time, and instead we focus on capabilities, then actually that's what's going to be important. We don't necessarily know what we're going to be selling in 5 years' time, but we know what capabilities we have, which are going to make us either good or bad in 5 years' time. And I think that's a kind of message which has come through in your writing as well, is it not?
Yes, that's right. I think that's the current, AI paradigm, right? It's really focusing on skills and build core skills that can be, leveraged across many different areas and businesses.
In fact, I remember exactly where that concept originally came from, because I was at a conference from Weights and Biases, who produce, what would you call it, like the GitHub for AI models, should we say, right? It's like the kind of repository which you use for model tracking and all those kind of things. Way beyond my comprehension, but I love being around smart people. It's great fun. And what he said really sat with me, because he said, if you're a software company, yeah, your IP sits in your code. Yeah. If you're an AI company and producing models, your models aren't really your AI, because your models aren't really your AI. Your models aren't really your IP, right? Because you know that in 6 months' time, all your competition are going to have better models, right? And hopefully you will as well. But it's not actually your model which is the IP. It's your ability to create and improve those models which is your IP. So it's the processes that you learn which are effective. It's the methods which you learn. It's the technique. And actually, it's those things which become the valuable IP as an AI company, and not the actual software itself.
Yeah, I would say it's, I would, slightly differ from what you said. Not so much the ability to improve the model, and maybe that's what you mean, but to tailor the model to model to your specific use case. Like, you take a generic AI, train on whatever data, and tailor it, train it, fine tune it, so that it's perfect at the task you want it to do. That's where the IP is, I think. And for us, for WiseQs, that means being able to build an AI that can sell as well, or even better than a human. And that's where I think our IP is. And for other areas, it may be different. But I think that's on the tailoring part. And actually, in some cases, companies are using, off-the-shelf API, closed OpenAI APIs. And so their value add is after that point, right? It's what they do with the output they get from the large language model.
Yeah, fascinating time. So when it comes to your own business, what have you personally found the most challenging? Because we talked about going from being very narrow to being very broad. Where have you found the biggest challenge to be in that?
I think so. On a more personal perspective, for me, that was going into areas I didn't know. I had no experience with marketing, sales, advertising in general. So that was where the learning curve was the steepest. Also, as I said before, ChatGPT and other tools were very instrumental in accelerating that learning curve. But for me, that was the most challenging, like picking up these new skills and learning as quickly as possible, right? Because when you're starting a startup, like time is everything. You have to be super, super fast. It's a very competitive environment. There are many people looking at the exact same problem at the same time. So to have a chance to succeed, you need to really differentiate yourself. And that means iterating very, very quickly. And so being able to go fast on these learning in these new areas for me was critical.
I imagine it's a very different mindset, almost the opposite mindset of enterprise, where it's like, we have to get this right. Whereas at a startup, it's like, we have to get this fast.
Well, you want to get it right as well. It's not one or the other. It's harder. You have to get it right fast and with limited resources, because it's not like you have an army of developers helping you, right?
Of course. Yeah. So tell me about WiseQs then. So what exactly does WiseQs do?
So I can start with maybe the vision or the ambition. I touch upon it, right? The ambition is to build an AI that sells better than humans. That's a grand vision. So why is that important? It's important because, as I said in the beginning, the e-commerce approach right now is very passive in a sense. So it's a showcasing economy, if you will. You ask for something and we show you product, and that's it. And then the burden is on you to find what you need, what fits your budget, your needs, your preferences. So it's really, the burden is on the customer, compared to physical store where you have someone explaining you and guiding you. And so we want to shift from that showcasing model to a persuasion model, where the online store is going to help you make that decision. It's going to explain what are the pros and cons of each product and help you navigate the trade-offs and find the best option, knowing your intent and knowing also your history. So personalization is a very important aspect of that as well. And so the goal is really to bring online shopping experience that is similar or even better than what you get in a real store.
Where do you feel the limit is with that right now? And what I mean is there a technical barrier to enable that to happen? Or is it more of a behavioral barrier for that to happen? Or is it kind of a combination of both?
It's both. So technical in the sense we have this large language model and this AI, and we still need to, tune them so that they are very good at selling. So first off, they are not trained for sales, right? Or they are marginally trained for sales if they luckily saw some, sales transcript in their training data, but we don't know about that. And there's no reason to think that, a generic model trained on everything is going to be particularly good at selling. So we need to bridge that gap. And that's one thing we're doing. And the other thing is behavioral in terms of the customers, right? Customers have been trained to type keywords that are not sentences, it's just a bag of words, right? Nike or whatever. We need to educate them that actually today we can do better than that. Models can understand sentences. You can have questions and they're able to answer. So many companies have started that, right? Perplexity AI is starting to educate people and show them that, you can have a search engine that it can do much more than just keyword. You can talk to the search engine and get very relevant answers. Google also with the AI overview is doing that. And we are doing that as well in the e-commerce world. We're showing that you can actually ask questions about, give me a snowboard that responds well when I see snow. That's one of our demos, and the model is able to find the right snowboard for you and explain you why this snowboard is actually good on icy snow and why it's good for you. Or you can ask a comparison, like many e-commerce websites, they show you a chart where you can select product and you can scan through long list of features and see which one has what and products like that. But with WiseQs, you can say, hey, can you compare these two and tell me what the difference is between these two products? And I tell you, this one is good for that one is better for this, and so on and so on. So educating the user to show them that you can actually ask these questions is the behavioral aspect, the behavioral education part you were referring to.
Okay. And so how does that work from a kind of user experience point of view then when they come onto the website?
So interesting. So today, if you look at how AI is manifesting on e-commerce website, it's a window. it's a chatbot on the side, right? So you have the search bar, and you can still do search there all the way. And then you have the chat area or the chat window somewhere else on the side where you can chat. And we believe that WiseQ is not right. There should not be two contact points to do kind of the same thing with different level of sophistication. It should be all in one. And so WiseQ is a search bar. We can also offer chat, but it's a search bar that where you can do conventional search and type keywords, or you can ask questions, or you can ask comparison about products, and you can ask question about the product and a question about the store. So it's all in one. It's only one touch point. And so it's really an evolution of search, the same way Perplexity AI is doing, right? Perplexity is one search bar, and you do whatever you want there. You can do a classic search, ask questions. Same thing for
And how do you educate the user then? Because obviously they're used to seeing a standard boring keyword search, right? So how do you educate the user who's come onto the e-commerce site that actually there's a lot more that you can do here?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have not quite figured that out, and it's a learning process for us as well as our customers. But there are clues you can inject, right? Suggested search, for instance, that traditionally under a search bar, you see a few keywords that you can type. So then you can say, hey, you can ask anything. Or you can show an example. Do you accept returns, for instance? That could be a suggested sentence. And to be honest, we're also counting on Amazon, which launched Rufus, which is a similar chatbot. We're counting on Perplexity AI. We're counting on AI to help educate users, right? It's not a task that alone we can take, but I think it's an overall market shift that is going to happen and has started to happen. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we hope that on the e-commerce side, we're going to accelerate that transition.
Because we were talking earlier about, are we being held back by technology or being held back by user behavior and the user adoption? And it sounds in this scenario like it's more like the latter. You have this very powerful tool built into the website, but it's more being held back by users not being used to it than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the current situation. I personally think it's going to evolve very quickly. Yeah, that's a good observation about where we are today.
Yeah. And how do you think that evolves then as kind of newer technologies come in, AR, VR, different ways of interfacing with the web?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the sky is the limit right now. So now you will be able to talk, like using voice, right? Instead of doing a keyword search, which is critical on mobile. Right? On mobile, you probably don't want to be typing, you just want to press the microphone button and start talking and get your results. And same thing, instead of looking at your screen, you can have the agent reading the information on the screen, or explaining, I should say, not reading, explaining the information on the screen and saying, oh, you want this? Okay, we find 3 products, and the first one is this, and the second one is better because, the third one is different because. So having much more, voice-based engagement models for e-commerce. And then, yes, virtual reality, the metaverse, it's sort of the holy grail, right? But although there was a lot of excitement with metaverse some years ago, things have slowed down a little bit, and it remains to be seen where this is going to go.
Yeah, I mean, I feel quite strongly it's just a timing issue and nothing else. When it comes to these technologies, they're just so immersive that it feels inevitable. It's going to be the new way of interacting with the world. It's just like the hardware and that side of the technology hasn't quite caught up yet.
There's hardware, but there's also a technical difficulty in that some people get sick. Even with the latest Quest, I didn't try the Apple headset, but the Meta headset, for instance, some people get sick. They still have trouble with this virtual reality, navigating in the digital space. So there's still a gap there, a technical gap to solve. And that's why I think the first step was not going to be full immersive virtual reality, but augmented reality, right? Where you have glasses like doing with a Ray-Ban glass that, superimpose information or even objects on reality. So, and for e-commerce, like there's great application of that. You can look at an item and then get information, or you can look at two items and the model explain you what the difference between these two items or something like that. I think before we get to the multiverse, we probably see augmented reality playing an interesting role.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, AR rather than VR has a bigger potential to change the way we interact with the world. Because while VR is, like you say, fully immersive, AR has the possibility to balance the best of both worlds, right? And I guess the way that I view it is that when we get to the point where we have, for instance, contact lenses can kind of essentially project, if you like, anything that you can imagine in front of you, then ultimately we stop needing really any form of hardware anymore other than what we have. Because why do you need a physical phone when you can display any information that you want in any way in front of you? You can interact with it any way that you want, whether that's with your hands, your voice, your body, whatever it might be. So that for me becomes really interesting in terms of how that changes things, because in the same way that like 20 years ago, you can imagine, everyone walking around with a supercomputer in their pocket. Maybe 20 years time, we can't imagine, but people won't be.
Yes, that's right. Yes, there's a lot of potential there. We'll see. It's hard to tell right now, right? I was with Meta when they started the metaverse, and there were great ambitions there. But sometimes, it's more difficult than it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of advantages then moving forward that small businesses have versus large enterprise, because I'm sure at this point we all believe that kind of AI is essentially going to change the world. But I think probably a lot of us are grasping and trying to understand why. So where do you see the advantages that small business has against enterprise in this regard?
Well, the traditional view is that big businesses can innovate, and some are very good at well. But the problem is that they have customers and they cannot radically change their model. And so the advantage of a small business with a smaller customer space is that they can pivot, they can innovate, they can introduce new features and new concepts much more easily. Take Google, for instance. It's obvious that Google is not, advancing on the AI front as well as you would think. And it's not they're not capable, in my opinion. It's because they have a large customer base, they have, advertisement, SEO, SEM, which are difficult to evolve. You cannot, from one day to the other, abandon model, and because that's your bread and butter, that's your revenue, right? And so, yes, the advantage is the agility and the capacity to pivot and innovate very, very quickly.
So another question then really about the adoption of AI. So do you see kind of a battle of philosophies almost when it comes to kind of automation versus augmentation?
Yeah, that's an interesting and vast question. I think both will go hand in hand, right? I think there's still that I still believe in human. I still human have a lot of values they can add to in a lot of areas, and I don't think replacing them totally with an AI is the most efficient. Maybe from some perspective, cost is the most desirable, but it may not be the most efficient. And in some other areas, yes, there's probably entire process that can be conducted with AI. And so there's a lot of talks around agentic AI right now, right? And yes, there's certainly, like take business processes, for instance, certainly business processes that can be automated 99%. You get the invoice and you need to reconcile with, your purchase order and things like that.
Oh, you're talking my language.
May require AI because every purchase order may be different. Your invoice are different. They're coming from different customers. So we used to have a human looking at the things and, but it seems like AI will soon be able to carry this. That said, you probably don't want to give your, business credit card to an AI and let it go wild because it's late, right? And want the AI to spend $1 million instead of 100, 1,000. just because they're hallucinating an extra zero somewhere. So there has to be, guardrails and human checkpoints where you verify that AI is behaving as expected. So I'm not sure we can really separate the two. In my opinion, and they are both very important. And as I said, I still believe in humanity, and I still believe humans has a lot of value to add. Right now, we're a little bit taken off guard in a sense, right? And some people are panicking that, like, are humans going to be irrelevant? Well, probably not. But it's going to take some time because we figure, are we going to work with these intelligent aliens, right? That AI are becoming. But I think the both will go hand in hand. And by the way, this point about agentic AI, it tells me also there's an area that I think is not considered enough: debugging and tracing the behavior of your agents. We're like, you're a developer as well, right? So you've been using debuggers and tools to understand what your program is doing and where it's diverging from what you expect it to do. And I think we need the same level of tooling and introspection for agentic AI that I don't see yet. I'm sure someone is going to work on that soon, but we will need that kind of capabilities at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think the example for me is actually coding tools, actually, because you have projects like Devon who are just like, yeah, we're going to create an automated coder. Yeah. And then you have other things like Cursor, which is like, we're going to give a developer superpowers, right? And it almost seems like they're battling from different philosophies. Like one is just absolutely desperate that like, yeah, we're going to automate it. It's going to do everything on its own. And the other one is more like, hey, look, we're going to make you the best, most efficient, most productive version of yourselves that you're going to be. And I see that in different areas. I mean, you mentioned agents, and obviously there's a wide range of what people call agents, right? For the most part, I find people talking about agents are, pretty much talking about like, hey, yeah, it will just go off and do its own thing, right? Whereas, for instance, with the agents that I build on our kind of workflow platform, on the operating system, it's very tightly coupled. And that means that you design a workflow and it works in the constraints of a workflow in the same way that an employee would, right? No. Because when you run a business, you don't, however capable people are, you don't want them just making it up as they go along. They might be super smart, but you still want them to follow a process. You still want to see what they're doing. You still want to ask them questions. And occasionally, you still need to correct them when they're wrong. But again, so many people seem to be following this philosophy of like, oh, we'll just build an agent and it will do it for us. And I struggle with that.
Yeah, even just for the reason that AI made mistake, right? So if anything, you want to make sure you control a bit your AI. But yes, you're right. Business processes follow a very specific process actually, and you need to make sure your AI is adhering fully to that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So while we're on this topic, then, do you use any AI coding tools yourself?
So I'm using GitHub Copilot, the Visual Studio Code. I've yet to use Cursor AI. Like I'm hearing a lot of good things from many different people about that tool.
Myself.
Yeah. So I'm a little behind on that, I have to say.
And so what aspects of the Copilot do you use? Is it like autocomplete when you're working on some kind of repetitive code, or?
Yeah, it's autocomplete. It's very useful. Time gain here, which is, very, very concrete and very obvious. But one thing, probably the most useful for me, is code reviews. As a startup, we have only a few developers, and we're all working very hard. And we still do code reviews, but doing a first pass with the AI is so valuable because it's catching a lot of very easy bugs that you could spend time for no good reason on. So it's for me, code reviews is one of the most For designing and architecture, it's more of a mixed bag. I use it to get sometimes initial ideas.
Mhm.
I felt so WiseQs is Azure native, so we're using Azure Cloud. And I felt that for something as advanced as Azure, the GitHub Copilot is not necessarily there yet. And so
Mm.
I still need to put a lot of effort in ensuring the design is exactly how I want it to be and optimized for what I want it to be optimized.
And again, I think this is another argument towards control rather than freedom. Yeah. And it's something that I've experienced myself even in Cursor, where we're working with a kind of orchestration framework called Ingest. Yeah. And that's standard orchestration stuff, right? It makes sure our code runs, it retries. If it doesn't, we have traceability, all of these different things. Fantastic developer experience is the main thing for me. We can be running on a Next.js stack for the front end, Python for the back end. Sorry for the non-technical people, but we could be working on completely different technologies and absolutely seamlessly communicate between the two. But of course, the problem whenever you work with non-standard libraries is that AI doesn't get it. Now, the way we've tackled that in Cursor is essentially we build documentation files for the AI. So obviously it's human readable as well. But what we're doing is we're going, right, here are the patterns that we use. And then every time we get something wrong, we go, okay, agent, look at the documentation, tell us why it wasn't clear, and propose an edit so that we don't make this mistake in future. And actually, it's only through that kind of customization and control that you really start to sculpt these tools into working in the way that you want.
Yeah, you touched on a very important point, the importance of documentation. Well, in engineering, we've always, and I've always stressed the importance of documentation and told my engineers to make sure they document code because, for themselves, it's important for the future. But it's a hard battle because it's time consuming, difficult. Not everybody has, the language skills to really write perfect documentation. But with AI, you can actually, what I do with GitHub is that I first ask the AI to write documentation about what I want to do. So that means I start documenting myself to the AI. I explain, okay, I need to do this and this and this. Please write the documentation. And then I use the documentation. I said the AI, please write the code for that documentation. And so like, it's interesting how documentation is becoming central in the process when it was before like more, marginal maybe. So I think that's very interesting. And that's very valuable because then you have the benefit that we were advocating for in the past about, making code readable. And, 5 years from now, when someone else read that code, they'll still be able to understand what intent was, what it's doing, and what the limitations are. So that aspect is very interesting.
Yeah, and that's definitely a pattern I've used as well, is documentation-driven development. It is, right? And it works fantastically well. I think whether you're technical or not, the lesson from here is that if you want AI to be able to do something well, then you just follow the existing best practice for humans, right? I've found time and time again that if you're working with good quality code, then the AI will produce more good quality code because it follows the patterns. If you're working with bad quality code, it will write bad quality code. So all of these things kind of point back to, well, AI are trained on human data. So if I'm ever not sure how to do something, I always say, what's best practice? I'd probably say best practice in every single prompt I ever used because it kind of just directs it in the direction of, well, like, don't bias it on what I'm saying. Make sure this actually makes common sense.
Very interesting, this back and forth discussion, very early project, when you're in the design stage between you and the AI. Yes, what was a good practice and what are the pros and cons, and it's interesting. So it's bringing, it's synthesizing, the entire world knowledge or coding knowledge and explaining it to you. That's one of the strengths of AI, right? As we said before, like reducing the learning curve and the training.
Yeah, and that's probably the thing that I found most powerful was just how you can hyper learn. I mean, 15 months ago, I didn't really code. I'd spent my whole life building solutions, but it was always either I had developers do it for me or I use no code tools. Yeah. But the ability to learn quickly with AI is just through the roof. And so I've gone from that to building kind of massively complicated systems just because, you're not saying do it for me. Every time you're going, explain the options, what's the best practice? Oh, what about this? Could I combine these two ideas? And you're using it as the way I see it is it's like having a very experienced engineer next to you. As long as you ask some factual questions, they're not going to kind of hallucinate and get it wrong. And you want to use your own judgment because you have context, which it doesn't, but it's a fantastic resource to draw on. So I guess that probably leads me to my final question, really, which is learning with AI. I know that you read a lot of papers to understand what's going on. And I know that you also do a lot of experimenting, building things and playing. How do you personally see the balance between learning through consuming knowledge, if you like, and learning through building and experimenting and doing?
It's two different learnings. For me, the reason I read a lot of papers is first, I want to stay current, right? But it's also a way to get ideas and force me to think a little bit out of the box. So it stimulates my creativity in a sense. And so I know it's learning, but it's really putting you in a mindset where you're a little more innovative, I think, when you are constantly, reading and fed innovations from other people. In a way, it's like talking to other people, right? Instead of kind of them, I read their papers. So that's the idea. That's the same thing. Learning by doing, yes, it's critical. It's critical. I've always thought all my career, you can't understand something unless you have tried to build it yourself. And that was in the context of machine learning, right? Many algorithms, you can read the paper, but until you really build it and try to implement it, you don't really understand the details. So I think it's probably the most important way for me to learn, learning by doing.
Definitely. Excellent. So just a final question then before we wrap up. So how do you see, and this is a very speculative question, how do you see a typical small business looking like in 5 years' time?
How do I see small business looking? So first, I think there will be a lot more businesses created for the reason we mentioned before, right? It became so easy now. The learning curve has compressed in so many areas that a lot of people will be solo entrepreneurs and will be able to start their business. That means it's going to be much more competitive, right? Because every business will probably have many more competitors than before. Which tells me, and again, that takes me back to my faith in humanity, that what's going to make the difference is the human creativity. So when everybody, start very high, when there's too many businesses, not everybody will be able to be successful. And so there are going to be a differentiation, which is not going to be on the AI because everybody has access to it, but it's going to be on the added value by the human, right, by the business owner. So I think we're going to see very interesting, development in the future. I think things are going to accelerate in that area as well, like, in the business landscape. And hopefully this is going to be good for everybody.
Yeah, exciting times. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Jody. It's been a pleasure for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was very, very fun.